Hi everyone, my name is Sonia Ivie. I'm currently in my second year at Trident University where I'm studying for my PhD. And career-wise, I work with a government partnership program called the Excel in Lagos, Nigeria, where we use technology to drive learning for over 400,000 pupils. So using direct instruction, they use tech-enabled devices for the teachers, but to try drive compliance and in terms of measurement of performance, so that how that impacts on the learning outcomes of the pupils. For my project, I have chosen inclusivity and diversity, which was a challenge that was found at St. Mary's University. Now, I'll go starting with an overview and talking about St. Mary's and the description of the organizational problem, applying the critical theory and organizational culture framework to resolve the problem, my learnings from the project on higher educational administration, and also questions. Now, quick overview. The university selected for review was St. Mary's University, San Antonio. A department selected for the Department of Education. That's because I currently study from Nigeria, and that was not part of the universities. The university I would have chosen from Nigeria were not part of those that were displayed on the website. A little bit about St. Mary. So St. Mary, based on the college result online, St. Mary has a total enrollment of about 3,000 students with a student ratio of 12 to 1. And university has a diverse student community of about 69% of students identifying as Hispanic, Latino, and 57 identifying as female, while 43% identify as male. Okay. 3% of students are black, while 3% Asians, 15 are white, and all other ethnic tribes, and 48% are on the Pell Grant. And so that is also the outlook of the education department of San Antonio. The motto is education for service, justice, peace, and integrity of creation. Yeah. So, a bit more about St. Mary's. In as much as they will say the faculty is diverse and has 63.37 um, employed as full-time, and 36.3% of the staff faculty are part-time. 42% are male, female, and 33% as identified as non-white. And their mission statement also talks about a lot of diversity, and you would expect that there will be a lot of inclusivity also. But however, because I could not reach out. This is an hypothetical interview, which was based on the information that was found at the website. I've also linked that in my reference. The hypothetical interview identified that the current challenge with the university was a lack of inclusivity amongst the teaching staff and the student body. Diversity is significant in the training of students to work in different contexts, as we know, and in fostering a culture that values respect and inclusivity of all people. So, non-reflection of of this variety of the neighborhood and society in the teaching staff and student was identified. Though they offer courses, like you said, in the art, in the literal art, and they tend to the education department who has a unique program. By the way, it takes St. Mary's is an oldest university in Texas, so they have a lot of members of their faculty that have a lot of experience. However, with this problem that was identified, that of diversity, though they have a lot of student bodies from all over the world, the fallout was that they had challenges in attracting and retaining a more diverse faculty and student body, which will be challenging in a competitive labor market space, especially if you consider that the world has become a global village. So, needing to guarantee the curriculum and pedagogy are inclusive and culturally relevant, necessitating continuous professional development, and addressing also any prejudice or hurdles in the recruitment and admission process that may contribute to the university's lack of diversity. So, in terms of contextualization, I was able to look at, in context wise, what the oldest university in Nigeria, um, especially in the southwest, is the University of Ibadan, okay, which also dates back into the early 1940s. And we found out that in terms of what the challenges they also faced, it seemed a bit similar to what St. Mary's University was facing. And so some of that was based on research that the university had been chastised for failing to respond appropriately to the changing needs of Nigerian society, and they had problem adapting to society requirement and expectations, because I think it's also one of the oldest universities. So juxtaposing in terms of both colleges, they align in terms of having financial demands as you would expect of almost universities that are that old, and then adapting to changing societal needs and expectations. Other considerations were, which was also in terms of similarity, was recruiting qualified lecturers and having a non-favoritism approach. So, in terms of theoretical framework, the theoretical framework, which I also based on the research, that could actually address this was the appropriate was by Bess and D 2012, which is a critical theory and organizational culture. So the critical theory and organizational culture, the theoretical framework that investigates power dynamics, social inequalities, and prevailing ideologies that impact organizational practices. Okay, it tries to expose and confront the underlying structures and conventions perpetuating an organizational disparity and exclusions. Okay, key points in this critical theory and organizational culture are focused on the power dynamics, social disparities, ideologies and discourse, and resistance and transformation. Now, application of the theory in the theoretical framework in resolving the issue at St. Mary's, that there was a need for them to create a more welcoming and inclusive environment, enable an in-depth investigation on the power dynamics, social inequalities, and dominant ideologies contributing to organizations' lack of diversity and inclusivity. The department is also able to examine the organizational culture, policies, and practices, and that may also be responsible for perpetuating even the inequalities and the exclusions. And also, emphasis was also laid on social justice and provisions of equal opportunities, as well as a little bit of deep dive into consistent training that was needed for students to work in a range of settings where culture and cultivating of inclusivity becomes a pattern of the mode of operandi of the university, and investigating and challenging of state power structures and social processes that impede diversity and inclusivity. So, what are the possible solutions? If this is done, the university will be able to then identify the prejudices, the assumptions, and discriminative practice of Department of Education's workspace, the culture that has been impeding on the diversity and inclusivity, and there should also be free discussion of power relations and the experience of marginalized groups in the department. So though they have a diverse workforce, so there is need for them to go to the round table and talk about the feelings, all of the things that makes for communal growth. And I like measures of diversity and inclusivity, and examples also include recruiting and hiring diverse candidates that assisting minority students and fostering an inclusive and welcoming environment. Constant review and monitoring are also required to guarantee that diversity and inclusion programs are effective and as well as sustainable. An organization can critically assess and question the power structure, the norms and beliefs that leads to a lack of diversity and inclusiveness by adopting a critical theory approach. Now, the consequences of not doing this will lead to mixed opportunity for growth, limited perspective and cultural understanding, inequitable learning environment, damaged reputation of the university, narrowed viewpoints, lack of flexibility, fear of harassment by students and faculty members, low retention rate, decreased student engagement, and a huge talent loss, which the university cannot afford if it's in the global space. Now, as an educational leader who has spent over 25 years in the educational space, the key learnings for me as an administrator were that all higher institutions, irrespective of whether they are based in St. Mary's, in San Antonio, Texas, or they are in Nigeria, way back here in Nigeria, all higher institutions, irrespective, they face various levels of challenges. And so there's need for joint collaboration for resolution of the problem. This is key so that they can actually attract the best of the students that they want to give that global view of a university that actually accepts cultures and norms that are different from theirs, especially if it's an international university like St. Mary's is. Another thing is that the mission and the vision of any organization goes beyond what is written to what is practiced. I know that as an educational leader in the space for over 20 years, that all stakeholders must walk the talk. It's not enough to have mission statements or visions that are just displayed, but it must be seen to be active in the recruitment process of the staffing, in everything that drives the ethos of the university, to ensure that everyone feels valued, their opinions are valued, and then that would also help to university to get a lot more retention of students, because the word of mouth of a student who has actually benefited from the largesse of the university will go a long way in driving in more students. And that also any institution that is what is on yours can attract the best faculty in terms of the staff and the faculty members, and the student workforce. So, but retention must be done, and it comes with diversity and inclusivity. The world is a global space, the global village, and so if the university needs to maintain its standards, being one of the most revered universities in Texas, having a long history of being the first, then they must also look at as their workforce, everything that has actually been affecting the education department, because that is necessary in this 21st century. Diversity is what exists, and inclusion is what must be done to embrace the existence of diversity. That is a quote by Werner Myers. And in conclusion, it is crucial to emphasize that rectifying the Department of the Education's lack of diversity and inclusivity will be definitely a complex challenge, but it will take dedication of the entire department, including the faculty, the staff faculty, and the student to make this work. So all hands must be on deck to ensure that the university is serving all of its community, entire community, with nobody feeling left out by us. The success of lack of any educational institution rests squarely on the shoulder of the leadership in fixing the right pegs in the right holes. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Please feel free to drop any questions or comment, and my references are also attached. Thank you.